She stepped into the ballroom like she didn't belong, yet somehow every eye turned. Her black silk dress shimmered under the golden chandeliers, calm, poised, powerful. But when he turned around, his smile froze mid-sentence. There was a flicker of recognition, then disbelief. She gave him a gentle nod, lips curled in a knowing smile. And that was the moment David Langston realized. He had lost something he would never get back. Just a few years earlier, Clara Mitchell would have never imagined herself in a room like that. She wasn't the woman people noticed. At least, not in the way they do now. Back then, she was soft-spoken, kind-hearted, and always the one standing behind someone else's spotlight, especially David's. She had stood by him when no one else did, through unpaid bills, sleepless nights, and quiet dinners made from canned soup and leftover dreams. Clara believed in him. She believed in them. But once the money came, so did the shame. Shame of her body, shame of her presence. David didn't leave Clara because she failed him. He left because she reminded him of who he used to be. This is the story of how Clara Mitchell was thrown aside, and how she rose, not just lighter in weight, but stronger in soul, until the man who broke her couldn't even meet her eyes. And at that time, she had no idea what was coming next. Clara Mitchell loved quietly. She wasn't flashy or loud. Her world was filled with simmering pots, handwritten recipes, and a tiny kitchen in the back of her aunt's cafe. That's where she worked every morning. Flour on her apron, soft jazz on the radio, and hope in her chest. David Langston would stop by sometimes, hair messy from another failed interview, loosening his tie as he walked through the door. Clara always smiled when she saw him. "Sit," she'd say, sliding over a warm plate of cornbread and her best homemade chili. "You're gonna land something soon. I know it." He'd kiss her forehead, mumble thanks, and stay up late with her, dreaming aloud about their future restaurant. They even had a name, Mitchell and Langston. Honest food, honest love. That was the dream. Simple, shared. Then out of nowhere, David got a job offer. Big firm, tech company, out of state. Just a few months, he promised, eyes sparkling. "I'll get us set up. Then you come join me." She packed his bags, ironed his shirts, and tucked little notes in his suitcase. "Make me proud," one of them read. The first week he called every night. The second week it became every other day. By the third, her texts sat unread. Then, nothing. At first, Clara blamed the hours, deadlines, pressure. She cooked more, trying to stay distracted, but something gnawed at her. And then her best friend Elise sent a photo, taken at some posh rooftop party in the city. There was David, in a suit that fit too well now, and on his arm, a blonde, slim, dripping in designer, laughing into his chest like she'd always belonged there. Clara stared at the screen, numb. She didn't cry. Not then. Instead, she boarded a bus the next morning. 4 hours, no sleep, just questions. She found him in the hotel lobby, just like in the photo. Polished, confident, unfamiliar. "David," she called out. He turned. For a second, his face froze. Then he smiled like he didn't know her. "Clara, what are you doing here?" The girl beside him leaned in. "Babe, who is she?" Clara's voice cracked. "I'm your girlfriend." David looked away. That's when everything began to fall apart. Clara had always believed in small things with big meaning. A handwritten menu, a borrowed apron, a warm meal made with heart. Her dream wasn't fame. It wasn't fortune. It was a cozy corner cafe, one where people felt seen, where kids brought drawings for the wall, and old couples came in just for her blueberry pie. That dream had a name, Mitchell and Langston. She whispered it to herself every night, like a prayer. It was a promise, a place, a life she and David were building, brick by invisible brick. In her mind, she'd already painted the walls, picked the tiles, decided on the scent of cinnamon and fresh bread to greet customers at the door. And David was always there beside her, laughing, tasting sauces, scribbling numbers on napkins. That future felt real, until the lobby. Standing there, across from David and the sleek blonde clinging to his arm, Clara's dream shattered like glass on tile. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. "I've changed, Clara," he muttered, barely meeting her eyes. "I'm in a different place now." She blinked. "What does that even mean?" He sighed. "Look, I can't be with someone who isn't willing to evolve with me." She stared, unsure she'd heard him right. "You're embarrassed of me?" she asked, voice low. "Because I'm not like her?" The girl, Sophie, laughed. "Oh, honey, no offense, but he's just not into that anymore." Clara felt every word like a slap. "That?" she whispered. David shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't mean it like—" "You did," Clara said, finally seeing it clearly. "You meant every word." David looked down. "I'll wire you some money. Just please don't make a scene." Scene. She felt her breath hitch. She had defended him to everyone. Waited tables while he studied, lent him rent money, skipped meals to make sure he ate. And now here he was, offering her money like hush cash, because she no longer fit his image. Clara turned and walked out of the hotel, wind slicing through her jacket like needles. She sat on a bench across the street, watching the people go by. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her aunt. "The cafe's getting slow, honey. We might have to close soon." Another blow. She clutched her coat tighter, heart hollow. Still, part of her whispered, "Maybe I can fix this. Maybe if I change, he'll come back." She didn't yet realize the only thing that truly needed to change wasn't her body. It was the way she saw herself. The days that followed blurred together like a fogged mirror. Clara went back to her small apartment above the cafe. She hadn't turned on the lights in days. The curtains stayed drawn. The food in her fridge sat untouched. The cafe downstairs eventually closed. Her aunt couldn't keep it running. Clara lost her job. Then the power. Then the apartment. She packed 2 duffel bags and walked out without looking back. No plan, no money, no one waiting. At night, she curled up on a cot in the back of a women's shelter, surrounded by strangers' whispers and flickering overhead lights. She held onto her old recipe notebook like it was oxygen, pages worn, stained with splashes of vanilla and grease. Her grandmother's handwriting stared back at her. "Good food heals. But first, you got to let the fire burn." But Clara didn't feel healed. She felt hollow. There were moments she stood in front of a bathroom mirror and didn't recognize the face staring back. Her eyes had lost their shine. Her skin looked pale, stretched from exhaustion. And the weight she carried wasn't just on her body. It was everywhere. People passed her on the street like she didn't exist. She tried applying for jobs, waitressing, kitchens, but no one was hiring someone who looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Because she hadn't. Then one cold evening, as she sat outside the library for the free Wi-Fi, scrolling job listings with numb fingers, a familiar voice called her name. "Clara?" She looked up, blinking against the setting sun. A tall man in a grey coat stood a few feet away. Strong build, messy curls, soft eyes. "Michael," she whispered. He stepped closer, smiling with cautious recognition. "Clara Mitchell. From high school. God, it's been, 10 years? She tried to force a smile. "You look different." "So do you," he said gently, but without pity. They talked for an hour on the library steps. Michael was now a chef. Well known, apparently. Owned a restaurant across town. He had just left a meeting when he saw her. When she finally admitted she had nowhere to go, he didn't flinch. "You'll stay with me," he said simply. Clara shook her head. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity," he replied. "It's dinner and a warm bed, and someone to talk to who remembers the smell of your grandma's apple pie." Her throat tightened. Michael's apartment was bright, clean, filled with cookbooks and basil plants on the windowsill. He handed her a blanket and didn't ask anything else. That night, Clara stared at the ceiling in a stranger's guest room, wondering how her life had slipped so far from what she imagined. And though she didn't say it out loud, a part of her whispered, No one will ever want me the way I am. The next morning she woke up to the smell of rosemary and lemon. Michael had made breakfast. You still like your eggs over easy? He asked from the stove. She nodded. How do you remember that? He smiled. Because you made them for me once. After I got dumped before prom, you said eggs don't fix heartbreak, but they help. She let out a small laugh. Her first in weeks. Later that afternoon, while helping Michael organize some cookbooks, she pulled out an old journal wedged between them. Its cover read, "The Healing Kitchen." Inside were recipes, but not just meals. Herbal teas, anti-inflammatory foods, natural detox plans, handwritten notes, pages dog-eared. It had belonged to Michael's mother. She used to struggle with her weight too, he explained. This book changed everything for her. Clara stared at the worn spine. She really did it? She asked. He nodded. Bit by bit. Not for anyone else, just for herself. For the first time in a long while, something in Clara flickered. Not rage, not revenge, not longing for David, but the tiniest flicker of wanting to feel like herself again. And what about you? Have you ever been left feeling invisible, like no one would ever truly see you again? If you have, share it in the comments. Sometimes your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to feel a little less alone. Clara didn't decide to change overnight. There was no dramatic moment in front of a mirror, no tears on the floor, no movie scene music swelling behind her. It started with a cup of tea. Michael brewed it the next morning, a mix of turmeric, ginger and lemon from his mother's old recipe book. Clara wrinkled her nose at the scent. "Smells like dirt," she muttered. "Give it 3 sips," he smiled. "Then decide." She did. It was earthy, bitter, oddly comforting. Later, while Michael prepped ingredients for that night's menu, Clara sat at the counter flipping through The Healing Kitchen. The pages were creased, written with care. But what struck her most were the notes in the margins. Felt better today. Didn't eat to feel less lonely. Still scared, but trying. They weren't just recipes. They were pieces of someone's battle to feel whole again. That night, Clara stood in the guest bathroom, staring at her reflection, not with disgust this time, but with curiosity. She placed a hand on her stomach. It was soft, round, familiar, but for the first time, she didn't wince. She whispered to the mirror, unsure why. "I want to feel light, not just in my body, but in my life." The next morning, she asked Michael if he'd help her follow the book. He didn't react with surprise or excitement. He just nodded. Of course, he didn't push, didn't set expectations. They started with simple changes. A morning walk, swapping heavy sauces for fresh herbs, drinking water before coffee, breathing slower before meals. Clara kept reading. She kept sipping, and slowly, she kept showing up for herself. It wasn't easy. There were days she didn't want to get out of bed, but the shame was starting to unravel. Not because the weight was gone, but because she was learning to stop hating the person underneath it. She didn't know where it would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she wanted to try. Clara started with mornings. At first, she just walked, 10 minutes, then 15. No headphones, just the sound of gravel under her sneakers and the breath in her chest. She stopped skipping meals. She learned to eat slowly again. Really taste food, not rush through it like an apology. Michael showed her how to make roasted vegetables taste like comfort, how lentils could feel like love in a bowl. Every week they tried something new, one dish from the Healing Kitchen. Clara kept a small journal of how each one made her feel. Spinach and ginger soup, calming. Cucumber and mint water, refreshing. Oat pancakes with almond butter felt like home. And slowly, her body began to shift. But more importantly, her spirit did. She started to sleep better. She laughed more, real laughs, not polite ones. One night, she even danced in the living room while Michael cooked, her bare feet sliding across the tile. "Now that," he said, "is the Clara I remember." She blushed. "I don't remember ever dancing." He smiled. "That's because you were always taking care of everyone else." Now she was learning to care for herself. She even updated her resume and started helping at Michael's restaurant during lunch hours, chopping, organizing, experimenting with teas. For the first time in forever, she didn't feel invisible. But progress doesn't erase fear. It just gives it a quieter seat at the table. Some nights, Clara lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if all of this was temporary. What if she gained it all back? What if Michael saw the old her and decided she wasn't enough? One evening, after a long day in the kitchen, she looked at herself in the mirror. Her cheekbones now slightly visible, her waist a little more defined. But the voice inside whispered, "It's still not enough." She tried to shake it off, but shame is stubborn. At dinner, she picked at her food, distracted. Michael noticed. "Bad day?" Clara hesitated. "I don't know who I am without the pain," she admitted. "I don't know if I deserve this new life." He set down his fork. "You deserve joy, Clara. Not because you've changed, but because you were always worthy of it." His words sat with her, warm and uncomfortable, like sunlight on skin too long in the shade. That night, while folding laundry, her phone buzzed. A number she hadn't seen in months. David Langston. She froze. He left a voicemail. "Hey, I've been thinking about you. Could we talk?" Her heart raced. The old ache stirred, but it was different now, quieter, duller. Not because it no longer hurt, but because she wasn't the same woman he left behind. She stared at the screen, then looked toward the kitchen, where Michael was humming to himself, chopping rosemary. She hadn't replied, not yet, but something in her gut told her that call would change everything. The invitation came 2 weeks later. Michael was being honored at a culinary gala downtown. "Big crowd, good food, boring speeches," he joked. Then he added almost nervously, "I'd really like you to come with me." Clara hesitated. Events like that weren't for people like her, or at least that's what she used to believe. But that night, she stood in front of Michael's full-length mirror, wearing a deep emerald gown they had found together in a boutique. The fabric hugged her in all the right ways. Her collarbones peeked through. Her eyes sparkled. She didn't look like someone trying to disappear. When they arrived at the venue, the lights were warm, golden. The ballroom buzzed with chatter and clinking glasses. Clara walked in with her chin slightly raised, her fingers interlocked with Michael's. She didn't know it, but all across the room, people turned to look at her. Then, just past the cocktail table, she saw him. David. He looked thinner, not in the good way. There were bags under his eyes. His suit seemed a little tight at the collar. And beside him stood Sophie, still stylish, still sharp, but noticeably bored. He saw Clara and did a double take. She watched his brows furrow, confusion giving way to disbelief. He leaned towards Sophie. "Is that Clara?" Sophie shrugged, sipping champagne. "Whoever she is, she's gorgeous." He took a few steps forward, stunned. "Clara," she smiled softly. "Hello, David." His jaw clenched. "You look different." She nodded. "So do you." There was a long pause. He glanced at Michael, then back at her. "I never expected to see you here," he said. "I didn't expect to be here," she replied calmly. "But I belong here. More than I ever did with you." David opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Michael stepped closer, slipping an arm around Clara's waist. "She's my business partner," he said, "and soon to be co-owner of our new bistro." Clara held David's gaze. "She's also the woman you left behind," Michael added, "but who now stands 10 steps ahead." David swallowed hard. Sophie glanced between them, then excused herself. The crowd began to clap as Michael's name was announced on stage. He turned to Clara. "Come up with me." She hesitated, then nodded. They walked toward the spotlight, hand in hand. As she stepped onto the stage, she caught her reflection in the glass of the champagne tower. It was the same woman who had once sat on a park bench, crying over a man who made her feel small. But now, she wasn't small. She wasn't broken. She was seen, applauded, and she didn't owe anyone an explanation, not for her body, not for her journey, not for her joy. The gala ended, but something deeper had begun. Clara didn't just leave that ballroom with a hand in hers or compliments in passing. She left with something far more powerful, clarity. She used to believe her worth had to be proven through shrinking, through sacrifice, through earning someone's love by being less. But standing on that stage, she realized she had never needed to become smaller to deserve more. The love she had given David, patient, loyal, full, was never the problem. He just wasn't ready to receive it. And that wasn't her failure. That was his limitation. With Michael, it wasn't about fixing her. It was about witnessing her. The laughter, the scars, the stubbornness, the kindness, all of it. Today, Clara Mitchell co-owns a small restaurant called The Green Spoon. Their tagline, real food, real stories. She teaches young women how to cook, how to care for themselves, how to silence the noise and listen inward. Because healing isn't loud, it's quiet. A cup of tea, a morning walk, a deep breath before telling yourself, I'm enough, just like this. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge is simply thriving in peace. Maybe you've been through something like Clara. Maybe someone tried to dim your light, shrink your worth, or make you believe you had to change to be loved. But here's the truth. Your value was never meant to fit into someone else's comfort zone. So tell me, what was your turning point? That moment when you stopped trying to be enough for someone else and started being everything for yourself. Share it in the comments, because your voice might be the one someone needs to hear tonight. And if this story touched you, if you believe in second chances, quiet strength, and the beauty of becoming, leave a like. Subscribe for more stories like this. We still have so many souls to meet and so many hearts to heal.